when you stream, you put in all the information, you hit go live, and it counts down 3, 2, 1, and it says going live. But that took like 45 seconds to go live. Usually it's instantaneous. That was weird. Wait a minute here, see if anybody wants to jump in. Yeah, I know. What happened? I get the distinct feeling this thing isn't going to work to me. Keeps clicking off. You guys do swap paint? Uh, Sorry, I'm just waiting to see if anybody wants to jump on here or not. I should give it a couple of minutes. If nobody jumps on, I bail off. It is a Friday. I have driven 800 miles today. Ooh. Give me a minute here for somebody and I'll start. So far, I got nothing. Ugh. Get tired. Well, okay, what? I'll work with what? Last night I made my delivery in Louisville, Kentucky. He called dispatch and said, "Hey, I need to get back to Texas." So the guy said, "Hold on." About 10 o'clock at night, and he dug around in his computer and he says, "I can get you to Arlington, Texas." I said, "I'll take it." So he sent me down to Murfreesboro, Tennessee this morning. Supposed to pick up at noon. I was going to get there early because 99 times out of 100, if it's a midday pickup, hello. If it's a midday pickup, you get there a little early, they're ready. So I'm gonna got my alarm set for 8 o'clock in the morning, and dispatch calls me at 6, wakes me up out of a dead sleep. It goes, "Oh, you can pick it up early," and I'm like, "Really? You woke me up at 6 o'clock in the morning to tell me that?" So anyway, I picked up 3 pallets, not very large, but the 3 pallets combined, what, 3,100 pounds, I guess? Yeah, 3,100. I from You drunk? No, me not drunk. Central England. Hey, how you doing? Wow. Yeah, I'm between Dallas and Fort Worth right now, and this is clicking on and off for some reason. I don't really understand that. But I just go from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, to Arlington, Texas, which is a suburb of Dallas. Vancouver, Canada, right on. It's a little over 700 miles. Like I said, 3,000 pounds of pallets in a van that'll carry 3,100 pounds. So I felt that getting all the way here. And I just dropped off. I was trying to film the unload because whoa, get that guy. As you unload 1,000 pounds at a time, the suspension like bounds up. But I had to help the guy do it. Uh, when you shove 3 pallets into a van, the first one comes out real easy. And then you have to lasso the second one and bring a rope out for the forklift guy to grab the rope. Wrap it around the forklift and you hold it with your hands and he backs it out. You unstrap and wait and he pulls out. Then you go lasso the one that's way up the front. So I couldn't mess with my phone during that time. But when I got to the drop off point for delivery, it's a car part plant here in Arlington, and the plant goes on for days, and it's dark. So the address is just the front of the building, which is employee parking. So I go up front, look around. I'm like, it says no trucks, big letters, no trucks. So then you have to do the long march around this huge complex to try to find how to get in. And I did a couple big long loop around this giant place and finally found the entrance where the guard is. And they direct you to where to go. And the guy says, "Oh yeah, it's right over here." And there's this door number which didn't exist. But I did get in there, and there's all these guys sitting around. I said, "That's not a good sign." He goes, "Yeah, there's been nobody behind the desk here now for the last 20 minutes since the rain." So I sat down and waited. About half an hour later, the guy came out and said, "Okay, what have you got?" And remember, I'm driving a van, and trucks use a dock. They back up to the dock, and I use a ramp because my van is so much smaller. And big bold letters, it says, "Tell us if you're not dock height," which I am not dock height. I am ramp height. And I told the guy, and he's like, "Yeah, yeah, just go down to the end and park way down at the bottom. Don't get up on the ramp. Don't block it." All right. So I go down there and I wait around for a while. Nothing happens. I get my chair out, start listening to music and looking around. Finally, the door opens and the guy wakes me inside. I said, "Okay, here it is. I get my three pallets and I am out of here." Right. So he pulls up for the first pallet, and some other guy driving a forklift is doing something he doesn't like. So he stops and starts talking to that guy. "Oh no, you're supposed to this." I'm like, dude, you could just get this pallet. Finally gets the first pallet out, comes back for the second, hooks it up, and starts a phone call. So we're there about 10 minutes. I'm thinking, just pull the pallet out. And finally gets the second one, third, no delay on the third one. And there was no paperwork delay. So I just got out of there. Uh, Dallas Fort Worth area goes on for you drunkenly. No, not drunk, not drunkenly. Technically speaking, I'm not a drinker, but no, I'm driving. And pulled out. I'm on Interstate 20 going eastbound right now. I've got another 7 miles to go. So so hitting south on 45, which will take me back to the north side of Houston, which is home. That's fine. No, I'm just tired. What? I don't know what time is this too. I have been up for 20 hours as of right now, and I got 3 hours to go. I'm taken aback that somebody felt the need to call me at 6 in the morning to tell me I could be there before noon. I'm like, dude, I was dead asleep, but I don't have a lot of luck in the sleep department. Once it's hard for me to get to sleep once I'm there and good, but once I get woke up, that's pretty much the end of that. So here we go. Interstate 20 eastbound between Fort Worth and Dallas. In 6 miles, I turn off southbound. It'll be built up a little bit. Oh, cool. Thanks. Just grab away. Yeah, you take a look. I got a lot of weird stuff in here. I got some playlists. This is the expediting side of it. And one of the key things when you're out here doing this job, excuse me, you can reuse your material. Be friendly, because most of the people during a pickup for the shipping department or receiving department, they come in there and they're either in a bad mood or they're quasi hostile. If you go in there being friendly, cracking a joke, it makes things move along a lot easier. This guy had on a Chucky shirt. Everybody in there was kind of grumbling, and I said, I saw his shirt with Chucky, and I said, "Hey, dude, cool shirt." He goes, "Oh, hey, thanks." He kind of smiled, and all of a sudden he said, "Yeah, just go on down to the MOH and load it," and that helps. And something I say to every forklift driver when they're coming to unload you is, as they plug the forklift in, I always say, "Man, it's like you've done that before." And they kind of puff up. "Well, yeah, time or two." They always kind of, it just, you're kind of stroking their ego a little bit, and it just makes things go a little smoother. So that kind of made me happy. So I got out of there. The last few nights I spent in Ohio, it was cold. It's just got into October. The heat of the summer is finally over, and it was cold up north, which I really like. It makes sleep a lot easier. But I was staying in Franklin, Kentucky, which is just north of Nashville, just across the border. And it's a pilot flying J that I've stayed at on more than one occasion. Do you play Block Blast? Never heard of it. I don't even know what that means. So Granny always said you catch more. Yeah, that's true. You catch more flies with honey. Yeah, just be friendly. And I tell the same jokes. I use the same material over and over and over again. You know, like I said, I walked to the back and I said, hey, they told me to come back here and talk to a skinny guy named Fat Tony. Usually they start laughing, or if they say, yeah, go around to the back and talk to some guy back there, and I'll go around back and I'll say, hey, the guy up front told me to come back here and slap the snot out of everybody. So and I hold my hand up and I go, everybody line up. Just do something weird to get people laughing. Safe over there. Loves you and your family. Oh, hey, cool, thanks. But when I left the drop off here, the receiving department, I actually called dispatch and I put myself out of service. I'm no longer showing up on the board. I told them I got to go home. I've been out 3 weeks. I got to go home. I miss the wife. I miss the cats. I miss being home. Sometimes they say when you're married, your wife gives you the honeydew list. The joke in my house is I have an itinerary. We got some house projects we have to get to. Uh, I'm trying. I don't know if we're going to make it this time, but I am trying to go on a little mini trip with the wife. We like ghost towns. We have tried to check out some Texas ghost towns that are around our area, and every one of them was a flop. So I'm going on YouTube and I'm looking for a ghost town, a good one here in Texas. And you may have to do some driving to get there, but we're going to go ahead and try to go visit one. One's called Tellurug or something. You can look it up on YouTube. It's Tellurug. Well, I'll figure it out. But if we get the opportunity this coming week, we're going to go on a road trip. And, take some pictures and maybe bring a metal detector with us just in case. Something interesting. Said hi again. Hey, I'm still here. So I can read this now. Usually during the daylight, I can't see what the screen says. That kind of sucks. But yeah, I can read that now. Hi back at you. I don't know why there's so much glare on the screen. It's like it's reflecting back. It's just weird. Anyway, 123. I gotta move over here. Get ready to turn off. Tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna speed up here. That guy's backing off. That guy's moving over. I'm speeding up. Yeah, we had double accidents today coming this direction. On the other side of the highway, I was headed westbound. On the other side of the highway, an 18-wheeler went off the road. He was off in the trees with a tanker truck. And, I mean, who knows what caused that? But he was off in the trees, and traffic was backed up. And everybody's on the radio talking about it. Watch out for this, get to this lane, blah, 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 the usual stuff. And then on our side of the road, a truck fell over into the median. I mean, who knows what caused that? Let's see, Dallas. Nope. I need Houston South here. I'm sorry, I'm reading the signs. I have been up here in a couple of years. South, that's me. And then we get back on cruise here. So two wrecks back to back. That was, not a mile apart, unrelated, going in opposite directions. Whoa. Oh, wow, the brakes work. Yeah, when you're carrying 3,000 pounds of weight in a small van and you step on the brakes, it gets a little interesting. It doesn't want to slow down, and the rear end starts fishtailing. But now that I've got all that weight out of here, this van rides so much better. Get back out of here and head for cruise. Hold on a second. There we go. Okay, I gave a percentage of be careful with your surroundings that we watch you live charts. Oh, okay. But I watch. Yeah, I try to, you got to expect stupidity around you, so you got to keep your eyes, peeled at all times. With roars. The thing is, I ride motorcycles. Actually, at this moment in my life, I own a scooter. And when you ride two wheels, you get paranoid. And you gotta kind of expect people to do stupid stuff, so you ride a certain way, and that's the same way I drive. At this point, hey Butters, what's up? You found me. I came on here late. You found me anyway. Trying to hide. Yeah, I was telling everybody. I just did a run. Last night late. They gave me a run from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, earlier today to Arlington, Texas. 3,000 pounds, 3 pallets of auto parts. And I just dropped it off. Took a while to get it out. And now I went out of service and I just turned southbound. I went through Dallas. Now I am southbound on I-45 heading towards the Houston area where I live. And I'm going to be off for a couple days. The honeydew list is waiting for me. And I'm hoping if we get a chance, I wanted to go check out a ghost town. Like a little mini vacation. That'll be later in the week. That's the plan. Okay, the speed limit is 70. I'm going 64. Everybody on the right's going slow, and everybody on the left is going fast. What's up with this? I have enough gas to get me all the way home, so I am quite happy about that. So let's see. I like calling you Butters from South Park. Yeah, South Park Butters. Ooh. I was talking the other night about radar detectors, and to anybody who just drives normal, I recommend having one in your car. You don't have to be a speed demon, but if you get one that's programmable and you turn off the garbage and just leave the KA band on, it will sit in your car quietly. And that one time it goes, hey, you kind of like, well, you pay attention, you start watching your speed a little bit more. It can save you a lot of grief. A lot of grief. But the thing is, it only has to work once. Just if you're not paying attention or, it goes off, they don't randomly put up speed traps. They know areas where the speed limit drops and maybe you're not dropping fast enough. I mean, they know what they're doing. So I was just thinking about that today because you get off the highway because they don't run a lot of speed traps on the highway. You get into smaller areas is when they come in useful. And I've watched a whole bunch of people get burned. I don't understand the question. Are you there? What does that mean? I don't know. No, I'm sorry. I made a video earlier or the other night called Homeward Bound. This is heading home. I had dropped my load off about 30 minutes ago, and now I'm boogieing southbound to my house. And I've taken my van out of service, so they're not going to call me, and they're not tracking me. I've turned my tracking device off. But that's where I'm headed. I live just north of Houston. I've been living in a little town there now for, geez, 24 years. Colorado is my home, but I've lived here for 24 years. Oh, this guy. There you go. So I guess Texas is my home officially. Hey, what are you doing, dude? You coming over or read it? I moved over to let this guy pass, and he's not taking it. So hold on a second. Careful with the way you're going. Okay, bye. I like it. Okay, people. Somebody make a decision here. Yeah, now I'm blocking the show off lane. I got a guy behind me getting mad about it. All right, now I gotta go. That's it. There. 85 miles an hour just to get over. Ah, wildly annoying. Anyway, back to cruising. Depends on where you're tuning in from. In the United States, you don't cruise in the left lane unless you're passing. And I thought I was going to let that guy move over, and then I was going to go back to the middle lane, but no, he decided to get next to me and hang out. Frustration. Yeah, like I said, I've been awake for, I don't know, 20 hours at this point, and for some reason, I'm not tired. I'm trying to figure that one out. Of course, it's Friday night. This is something you got to think about. It depends on where you're coming from in the world, but people, even though it's illegal up one side down the other, people drink and drive, and as the night goes on, you start running into these people, and that gets dangerous. And one of the traits that they will have is they'll always be in the right lane where I am on the interstate. They'll be in the right lane, and they'll be going 5 over the speed limit. That's the universal "don't pull me over, I'm drunk" tactic. So I'm actually, well, there we go. I'm 5 under and I'm in the right lane. But that's just my cruising speed. So let's see what happens here on the way. Oh, about a year and a half ago, I made a video when I was at work, and it was about a guy, and I read a story about him in one of my World War II magazines. I really enjoyed it. Early in 1940 or 41, the Germans invaded Crete in the Mediterranean. They had an airborne attack, and they took the island, but it was very costly for them. But they ended up taking the island. I don't think anything happened in the rest of the war. But this kid was in the German military, German army. He was an administrative puke. He wasn't a combat soldier. He was a paper pusher. And he had a job, and he spent the entire war working a desk job in Crete. And no real fighting happened there after the invasion. And one of the universal problems with being out in the military, being out in the field, is you got to do your laundry. And I told this story about a year and a half ago, and I just want to go back over my streaming people. And Crete is a long, skinny island, very arid, very rocky. They grow olive trees. And that's about it. Olive oil. There's not a lot of farmland there, but a lot of the soldiers were from or killed or escaped. That left a lot of women, children. Yeah. Well, this guy got his laundry together. One day, he packed up all his laundry, put it in his backpack, and he went for a hike up into the mountains. And it's very rocky and terrain. He goes out of town, turns up a road, starts going up the hill. And as he's going up the hill, you see farms to the left and the right. Some trees, some scrubby trees and rocks. You see a farmland and a house, and he keeps going, and the trail gets skinnier. Then he walks a little more, and then there's another house and another farm. And the trail gets skinnier. Eventually, it gets down to no more than a goat path. And he gets to the top of the plateau, and off in the distance, about 100 yards away, he sees a house. And I don't know how they do it today, but back then, the people on Crete did not live in their house. They sleep in their house, but they live outside. They live outdoors because of the dry, arid climate. It's beautiful, sunny weather, and just they don't hide in their houses like that guy right there is trying. Yeah, he's doing stuff off the road too, so I got to watch him. And what he sees in the distance is a woman and 2 little kids. And when I say little, I'm going to say 5 and 7. Okay, I got to get away from these guys. He's doing the drunk thing. And he sees him in the distance, and there's outside, they have like a park bench, more or less, under a tree, and then there's the house in the background. And he starts walking across this field, and, he's a member of an occupying army, so they don't want to hang out with him or anything. So they run in the house. Well, he walks over, sets his laundry bag down next to the table, and he pulls 2 cans of some food item out of his bag and sets them on the table. Because another weapon in a war, especially back then, was food. Food's a big deal. And so he sets down 2 cans of whatever, and he leaves. Doesn't look back, and he goes back to work the next day in the afternoon. He comes back. He goes up the hill. There's the woman with the two little kids, and they see him and they run inside. And his clothes have been washed and dried, and they're folded on the table, and everything's sitting there. Now, back in the day, especially back then, but back when I was a kid, we used to have the sugar bowl on the kitchen table. I don't think people do that anymore. We don't. My parents don't. I haven't seen anybody else do it. But there used to be a sugar bowl on the table. Well, they had their sugar bowl sitting on the table outside with the lid off of it, showing that there was nothing in it, which is their sign of saying we need sugar. So he's all right. So a week later, he comes back up with his bag. They see him. They run away. He sets his laundry down. He fills up the sugar bowl. He has a package, pours in the sugar bowl. This guy did his laundry like this with this woman and two little kids for 5 years. Once a week for 5 years he did this. Never met him, never saw him up close, never had a conversation with him. But made this unofficial deal. You know, they're not on the same side of the war, but they need, this woman needs food and supplies, and cigarettes was a big currency back then. And he needs his laundry done. So every week this guy would deliver, and he said never saw what they looked like within 100 yards. Eventually, World War II ends in 1945. There was a huge delay in getting the soldiers off a creek. It was kind of a backwater by the time the war ended, so there was a big delay. But he continued to go up the hill and continued to get his laundry done. And finally, they announced, "Hey, you're leaving. We're going to send you home. The war's over. We're putting everybody on a boat and send you home." That guy went into the supply hut, filled up the bags, his duffel bag, without not dirty clothes, but he filled his duffel bags with food. He filled them up with everything he could possibly carry, and he went up the hill and he set all the bags down and he turned and left. And he walked out, and as he was leaving the field, he's right about to go over the edge down the footpath. He turned around, and the kids are now grown up. They're getting older, and they're going through the bags, pulling out all this food and setting it on the counter. And he just stood there and watched them. And now the three of them turned around, 100 yards away. They turn and they're looking at each other. He waves, they wave back. That's it. He turned and left. That was the last time he ever interacted with them or had any contact with them. And he kind of felt relief. He felt sad. He felt glad. But it's like, I helped this woman and her kids stay alive in a war when their food, supplies and staying alive was a challenge. And I got a kick out of that story. When you read historical books, they always talk about the macro. They talk about the big picture, this just giant unit attacked over here. I like stories on a personal level, but individual people. That's my enjoyment. There was a columnist during World War II by the name of Ernie Pyle who wrote. He was in Europe and he was in the South Pacific. He wrote a column that was in papers all over the country, and he was very famous because he wrote from a personal level. And unfortunately, he actually got shot dead on Okinawa in April of 45. He was writing an engine, apparently. They got fired on and they stopped and jumped out, and apparently he poked his head up or poked his head out or did something he wasn't supposed to do, and bang, dead. There is a museum, the Ernie Pyle Museum. I think that was in Indiana. I actually stopped by. It's real small. And I talked to the lady who worked there. And again, back in World War II, the name Ernie Pyle was a household name. It's like saying Arnold Schwarzenegger. Everybody knows who he is. But back then, everybody knew him. The problem is, there's not a whole lot of people left that were around when he had his reign. And they made a museum for him. It's one of those little tiny towns that doesn't even have a traffic light. And this little teeny tiny museum operated. The curator is a retired lady. She goes, the problem is the feds came in and pulled their funding. They said that so much time has passed that it's they don't want to the national arts or whatever they call it, people that fund these kind of museums, they pull the money. So there's a couple of law firms, she said, that run around seeking donations. They know how to contact people and they keep it propped up and keep this little museum. But I have no idea what it costs to operate a museum. Keep it open. I went through, it's real tiny, and it's got a Jeep. It says press on it, and there's like a dugout with, a typewriter sitting on the table. It's not, I mean, I don't really know what they're supposed to do with a guy who's a politics, but that's the only thing that town has is its history. It was a little teeny, I remember the name of the town, it's the size of my lifespan. And that, I kind of started thinking about museums. If you look around, when I'm out here driving and I know I'm going to be stuck somewhere like for a weekend, I start looking for museums. And I specialize in military and aviation. Those are my two targets. And if you Google museums around me and go on the map, you'll see some of them say closed or permanently closed. And you read what kind of museum it is. It got me thinking, if there is a museum that was put up surrounding a famous person versus an event, there is going to be a time when that person is no longer famous. When that person is so far back in history that time has kind of moved past them. And there's just the people that remember them aren't around. And Ernie Pyle would be an example. Roy Rogers and Dale Evans were two big time performers starting, I think, in the 1940s until the 80s or 90s. They were household names. They did cowboy movies and they did variety shows. And there was a huge museum for them out in California. And they both died off. And one of them said, this place becomes a burden, shut it down. He had a huge museum. But the people who grew up watching Roy Rogers and Dale Evans they're mostly gone at this point. What is this? Destroying all. Trying to do this because I'm bouncing around, destroying all history across America. See, distribute Pacific Northwest to play in there. But that's what I'm saying. Museums, again, if the museum is around an event, the Civil War, World War II, the invention of electricity, some event that has a museum. It's just when a museum is around that person. The person, as time goes on, the people that knew how important that person was just fades out. I grew up, when I was a kid, the TV isn't what it was back then. But MASH was a huge TV show. It was like the number one show for years and years and years. And they had their final episode in 1983. It was shot out in California. At the time, it was on private property, but now it's in Malibu State Park. And the wife and I went out there to visit the film location. And society is starting to encroach on the area. And I was young when that show was on, the 70s, as a little kid. And, I'm 57 now, and it dawned on me that in the not distant future, you're going to turn to somebody and say, the old MASH TV show, and they're just going to look at you and go, what's that? So as time goes on, that is fade out. The people that were in the series, there's only a handful of them left alive at this point. I think it's like Alan Alda, Amy Farr, Maxwell Klinger. That's like it. The rest of them died off. So the people that were in the show are gone, and the people that enjoyed the show are, getting older. There's some around, but it's just like everything. As I'm saying, museums are there, but they require funding. And when you don't have enough people paying attention to it, what can you do? That's why these people are desperately finding funding to keep this building open, even though there aren't a whole lot of people walking around these days that know who Ernie Pyle is, including adults. And my mother's 80. If I was to ask her who's Ernie Pyle, she probably wouldn't know. I know who he is because I'm a World War II guy. I'm a World War II buff. I pay attention to that. But yeah, it's kind of a sad state of affairs when the Roy Rogers Dale Evans Museum, they shut it down. They literally had an auction. It sold off all the little stuff they had in the museum, including his horse. He had a horse named Trigger. It was stuffed. They had died of old age, and they stuffed it. I don't know how you do that, but somebody bought it. Oh, you hear that? That's radar. It's got an auto view. Hold on, let's see what's up here. At the bare minimum, if you're not going to run radar, get Waze, the navigation app Waze, Waze. It tags police cars. So at the bare minimum, do that. And thank you for tuning in. I'm kind of trying to stay awake here. I got 160 miles to go. Blah. Yeah, so like I said, I travel, I look for museums, and there's certain museums I found that are conveniently located, but they don't really turn my crank, which the topic isn't interesting to me. But I do like military museums. Uh, the best aviation museum, and I've been to a lot of them. The best one I've ever been that really surprised me was in Connecticut. It was called the New England Air Museum. They have some of the coolest stuff you ever see in there. In, in World War II, they had combat blimps. Yeah, let's think about that one. The Navy had dirigibles, and they were used as observation points off the. They had some of the Pacific. They didn't really do much out there, but they used them off the coast in the Atlantic, and they were out there searching for basically U-boats and whatnot because they could loiter. I mean, think about it. I think the cruising speed. Again, I got this thing for numbers. It seems like the cruising speed of a dirigible was 47 miles an hour, and if you cranked it wide open, it could go like 55. So it's just up there hanging in the sky. And I don't know where they had this or who had it in their barn, but the gondola, the part that hangs under the dirigible, they have one there that's restored, and you can walk up on a little ramp and get up and look at it. And if you're looking at it from head on, it's kind of V-shaped. You know, the bottom is narrower than the top. And you look inside, and there's a pilot and a co-pilot. Why you need two pilots in that is a mystery. But one of them is a mounted chair, and one was a chair on a swivel, side by side. Inside the cabin, there are seats, one on each side and one in the rear, a little chair, and a pair of giant binoculars on a mount on a swivel so you can just lean forward and hold it and look out. There's a bunk. There was a stove with a coffee pot on it. And on the left, it's all glass and one glass encased. And on the left and the right, there's a motor, an old radial engine. And there was a funny shaped door that you could open and take two steps and you could walk out to the motor. Could you imagine being 5,000 feet in the air and you just open this door and you step out into space because you got to go out there and add a little oil to the motor? And they would go out on good days and they would, get up to 5,000 feet. That was their sweet spot. And they would cruise along slow motion and just watch for enemy activity and U-boats and stuff. And there was one, quasi famous, one popped out of they saw a U-boat and they got up in the clouds and they slowly headed over to where they estimated it was. And they cranked it up to top speed, 55 miles an hour, and dove out of the clouds and got over it. And they carried, for some reason, they had a Thompson submachine gun on board. And somebody opened the door and fired a magazine full of bullets at the U-boat. The U-boat crash died. So some guy said he could claim that this actually got to strafe a U-boat in a slow motion dirigible. I think, put that in your, put that feather in your cap. But just the equipment they have there was really nice. And it was a sign. It was by an airport, and I was up there delivering something. I was going to be stuck. I got there Sunday, and it had to be delivered Monday, and I had nothing going on, so I'm driving to go find some food, and there's a little sign that says New England Air Museum, and it's like a little handmade sign. I drive down there, and it turned out they have a completely flawlessly restored B-29 bomber indoors. Um, some people are familiar with the PBY Catalina, which is the seaplane, the big seaplane. And then there was a Boeing 314, which was a seaplane that carried a lot of people. And then Sikorsky made three copies of a big seaplane that had bunks and seats in it and stuff. And only three were made. One got destroyed. I think two got destroyed, and somehow they got the last one, and it's a static display inside restored. Absolutely gorgeous. But they have a lot of rare and very nicely done machinery and equipment for the wars. And I asked one of the guys there, I said, where did you guys, where's the money for all this? This is not a quickie display. And they had a plaque on the wall, and there were names all over it. And he said these are World War II veterans, and everyone on that list put at least $1 million into this museum, donated. And I was thinking about that. What a legacy to leave behind. Being young and going off and fighting in World War II and coming home, starting a business or becoming professional or whatever, and becoming super successful, and then getting towards the end of your life and saying, hey, you know what? I've got all this money in the bank that's not doing me any good. I want you to do something, leave a legacy. It's kind of get to a point where you got everything you need. You got all the money you need, and then you realize that, you can't take it with you. Why don't you do something with it and use it to help preserve history? And I kind of got a kick out of that. Look at the lights coming off of this vehicle. They must have had a sale on blinky lights. Look at this guy. Yeah, they had definitely had a sale. Uh, yeah. When I was driving westbound, there's this thing going on in Mexico, and if you haven't been to the South, I mean, if you look down, you probably have noticed this, but didn't know what you were looking at necessarily. But you'll see a car with the bumper taken off, with a tow hitch towing another car with the front bumper taken off, with a tow hitch towing another car. So it's three cars, one driving, two getting towed, and it won't be just one. It'll be like a series of them, like 10 of these be going down the road. And this guy taught me this years ago. In Mexico, you can import used cars, but they have to be at least 10 years old. It's just some weird tax law down there. So these guys will come up here in a van, and they have it's a full time gig. They ride up here in a van. They've got a buyer that goes and finds these 10-ish-year-old cars. They load up, they hook them ducks in a row, and they tow them all back to Mexico. They sell them, and then the van's towing some vehicles. They go back to Mexico, and those guys get back to the van. They come up. That's their gig. So we're driving along in the car one day, and because I'm out here on the road, I notice this stuff. And I turn to the wife and I say, "You see that? We're coming up behind one of these things." And I say, "You see that car right there?" She's like, "Yeah." And I said, "The guy driving the car will be a 30-year-old Mexican guy with a mustache." And she looks at me. And we go by, and it's a 30-year-old guy, Mexican guy with a mustache. And she looks at me and goes, "How'd you do that?" I go, "Because the next one's going to be the same." She goes by and looks over. Sure enough, I said, "They're all the same. They all look the same. They all dress the same. Same haircut." But that's what it was. But she looked at me like I had two heads when I said that to her. Not just saying, but the fact that it was accurate. Holy God. 157 miles to go. Holy crap. This guy's in a hurry. Yeah, this van handled that weight, that 3,000 pounds, just fine. You just, if you're ever out here doing this kind of work, just remember that your stopping distance is different. You step on the brakes, unless you want to really smoke them, you got to kind of plan your stops a little bit further out. That's why 18 dealers drive a little bit slower than everybody around them because they need more room. They gotta be looking 3, 4, 5 cars ahead. Kind of let the momentum go past them because they can't stop on a dime. Cars can. And when I was going around corners, I was having to slow down way early because the back end would fishtail a little bit. Kind of wag the tail. Just wait. Move on. The wife has, we built the catio, which is an outside, kind of like a chicken coop. They built the cats out of the house without them being loose. And she started the process. She hasn't told me the current status, but we were putting a little hole in the wall and putting a cat door access so the cats could just go outside and be in this little enclosed area with a roof over their heads whenever they want to. So that's going to be our main project when we get home is finishing the catio and the cat door. And I can see where she did some of the work. She actually cut most of the way through the wall. Not to brag, but my wife is really good with tools, which is a total turn on. Doing our house, we're changing our bathroom around. We had that double sink thing going on. We went down to a single sink and they gave us more room. Cut a hole in the wall. She pinches off the plumbing and puts up the drywall and does plaster. And I'm standing back going, "You get it, girl. Get it." I don't know how to do that stuff.